Trade deadline day has come and gone. So, how did Kent Hughes do in his first go round as general manager and not as an agent? We will break that all down, myself and my lovely panelists, of course, on this week's edition of Hockey Inside Out. I'm Julian McKenzie, alongside our usual suspects, of course. Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette is here. CBC Daybreak Zone, Jessica Rusnak is here. Stanley Cup champion Rick Green with us always. Kent Hughes, as I mentioned before, just got past his first trade deadline day. We say goodbye to Brett Kulak. Arturi Lehkonen no longer in the fold. I thought Shea Weber's contract would have been moved, and Arizona ended up getting Brian Little's contract instead. But a couple of moves being done. Obviously, we think of Ben Sherratt moving a couple of days earlier as well. Tyler Toffoli also gone. Some prospects, some picks coming in. A lot of changes over the last few days with the Montreal Canadiens. Stu, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on how Kent Hughes handled the Monday, all the trading, all the offers coming in? Your thoughts?
Very, very, very impressive. Just the way he handled himself right through the whole process. The early trade for Tyler Toffoli, as he said, he wasn't looking to trade or trying to trade Tyler Toffoli, but he got an offer from the Flames he felt he couldn't refuse, and he went ahead and made it. And kudos to the Flames for jumping on that early, figuring Toffoli was a guy they could use, and the way he's played with them so far, they were right. And then just going into the trade deadline, he had said the only player he was definitely going to trade was Ben Sherratt, and he had spoken publicly about how he wasn't looking to trade Arturi Lehkonen. He said he's the kind of player that's great in the locker room and the kind of character they want to build around. He said he wasn't looking to trade Brett Kulak, but he also said if James called him and made him offers he couldn't refuse, he would. So maybe he was planning to trade both of them all along, but he played his cards perfectly if he wasn't, by letting other GMs know, I'm not looking to trade these guys. And you look what they got in return for Arturi Lehkonen. A former first-round pick, a defenseman who was Caden Gooley's partner at the World Junior team, plus a second-round pick for Arturi Lehkonen. That's a pretty good package to get for Arturi Lehkonen. And sell high. Arturi Lehkonen's value is never going to be more valuable than it is right now. He's having a career season, and as much as Canadiens fans might like Arturi Lehkonen, he was going to command $3.5 million or something next season, and they're already paying Army a 3.4. They can't afford to pay Lehkonen that kind of money, but the return he got for everybody is just really, really good. And he's, his poker face or whatever you want to call it from being an agent, it's working as a GM. And he got a lot more than I thought he would get for Lehkonen. He got more than I thought he would get from Kulak. The Sherratt trade was a good deal also. So just all around, he handled himself really well. And the other thing I really liked is what he did with Andrew Hammond.
Yes, I should mention him as well.
And when he was asked why he did it, he said, because Andrew Hammond deserves a chance to play in the NHL and continue playing. And Andrew, he said he thanked them for coming in and helping the Canadiens when, as he said, they were in deep water and they desperately needed a goalie. Andrew Hammond was 3-0 with the Canadiens. And it just showed the humanity that Hughes has. And such a difference from, Marc Bergevin's days of if you want loyalty, you get a dog and first come, first serve. And I think that's going to go a long way with Kent Hughes also. Guys around the league will realize, geez, this guy treats people properly. And I think that's another takeaway from trade deadline day that I think will make Montreal maybe a little bit more attractive to some players who might be thinking about coming here, just the way the GM treats people properly.
Yeah, I was quite impressed with, the way he handled himself. And obviously, bottom line is the moves that he was able to pull off. And I think he and everybody else knew that Sherratt had to go. Kulak, of course, there was risk that possibly they could lose him for nothing. So, he pulled the trigger on those guys to, get some really good prospects, draft picks in return. So that's just another indication of, him wanting to bring in the type of people that he believes is going to fit the mold of the Montreal Canadiens. And, when it comes down to crunch time, there's certain names that come up, and, you talk about the Lehkonen, as much as, him being well-liked, you've got to like the idea that he was able to make the move that he made with them. And like I said, he's trying to change the dressing room. He's trying to bring in some character, not to say that the guys that have left don't have that, but he wasn't happy, obviously, with the group that he has. And like we've talked about before, I think that it was a question of time when they were going to change up their personnel. And I have nothing but good things to say, and quite excited to see what some of these kids and draft picks are going to turn out to be.
And he has a good foundation still with this team that, it wasn't a complete fire sale that everyone was gone. And then those few players who are left standing are looking around saying, wow, this is going to take a while for this team to get back to anything competitive. That he kept some of the key pieces and he's able to build around them, hopefully, with some of the players that he was able to acquire, the draft picks for sure. But I liked his message too to the team saying, you know what, we're not going to just roll over and die at the moment. They're still, the bottom feeder team, but they're looking towards next year and redeeming themselves going forward. And I think Ken Hughes' approach was good too. As Stu mentioned, that I think other players around the league will take note. He knows what it's like for the players that day because he was an agent. And he said, my door is always open. I'm here for them. I can explain as much as I possibly can explain. And he tries to have an open dialogue with them. But Kent Hughes did a really good job of his first time as an NHL GM at trade deadline day and really make an impression around the league.
The other thing I like about the way he goes about stuff, and he's talked about this, is rather than getting just draft picks, he likes getting players like Justin Barron, the defenseman he got from Colorado, who were already drafted. He was a first-round pick 2 years ago. So rather than getting a first-round pick, you're getting a kid who was a first-round pick who already has 2 years of development under his belt, playing in the American Hockey League now, who's closer to playing in the NHL, obviously, than if you just went out and got a pick. And he's done that with quite a few of his trades. Rather than getting another second-round pick or something, he'll get a guy who was selected in the second round 2 years ago and is already further ahead in that development. And I like the way he looks at it that way. And it makes me think that this rebuild, reset, remake, whatever you want to call it with the Canadiens, isn't going to take as long as I think a lot of people, including myself, might have thought at the beginning. The Marty St. Louis factor coming in and just the way he's coached this team and got a positive vibe around it. And then these players that he's picked up that are already got a couple of years of experience after being drafted under their belt. So I think we're going to see the Canadiens have been exciting to watch since Martin St. Louis took over. And they're going to be more exciting to watch, I think, next season and the season after as more of these young players come in and join the lineup. So it should be fun.
And I agree with you, Stu, on that, bringing in a guy like Justin Barron and Cam Russell, Halifax GM spoke about him and saying, you know what, there's a kid that is a really good player with good size, mobility, and, fits the mold of the Montreal Canadiens, aside from being, a right-hand shot and a kind of guy that they want to have that probably will step into the lineup next year without leaving, the cupboard bare, so to speak, with some of the experienced guys, being moved. So that's a real positive. And again, that's the type of player you like to see, them hone in on and, going to give this guy a real good chance to play next year and be really solid. And you look at the numbers that they have right now of the guys back on defense, and they've got lots of guys that are going to be able to play. It's going to be a numbers game, but it's, much better situation to be in when you have too many guys fighting for spots than not enough. So great stuff to come from the blue line with again the smart players in the on the team being defensemen.
Yeah, I thought that if Hughes had only gotten Barron in exchange for Lehkonen, it would have been a good trade. He also got a second-round pick with it. So now the Canadiens have Goulet and Barron, who are the top two defensemen for Canada on the World Junior team. Pretty impressive resumes there. They're both 20 years old. It was, again, just a really impressive day for Kent Hughes.
Yeah, I'll say this too, just for the deadline, and I'll throw this to you, Jess. Like, the thing that impresses me the most with Kent Hughes is the fact that, a lot of the asking prices out there, you hear the name first round pick, and I guess our brains are not automatically inclined to think, okay, you want first round picks for this year. But the fact that he was able to turn them into prospects who were taken in the first round, and he got himself a first round pick in next year's draft, which maybe we're projecting too early. A lot of people feel next year's draft is going to be better than this year's draft. I don't know. He did some pretty creative things to kind of get what he wanted. That's how I read it.
No, I agree with you. And it just seems like his planning is much better than Marc Bergevin, that he realizes, okay, next year it looks like the cream of the crop is going to be a little bit better than this year. So let's not focus on this year. Let's try and get a 2023 pick or, second round in 2024, that kind of thing, and continue to build for the future. And that was always something that I found interesting with Marc Bergevin, that he always said, in order to build a team, you have to build through the draft. But if you look at the players that he's drafted over his years as the GM, especially the first round picks, the majority of them are gone. So he hasn't been able to build through the draft. So that philosophy didn't really work because I think he wasn't planning too far ahead. And that's something that Kent Hughes is doing, is to say, okay, let's continue to build things up. So it's not just the 2022 draft, it's going to be 2022 and moving on.
Yeah, Bergevin always seems to be like patchwork, and Hughes seems to have a solid plan moving forward for what he wants to do.
There's a lot of time to tell with that plan. Let's get to the second question here with regards to some of the players who are gone. Just hearing the players and the coaches speak about some of these departures, you can obviously tell. We know it's a business, but they could tell there's some sentiment over guys like Arturi Lehkonen leaving. I don't know if you guys saw Brendan Gallagher's Instagram post, his tribute to him. A lot of players speaking very highly of Ben Chiarot leaving in the last few days, and Tyler Toffoli as well. Rick, I'll start with you. Which player traded by Kent Hughes do you think the Canadiens will miss the most?
Well, I think ultimately everybody knew that Chiarot would be changing teams. And, the other player that comes into the picture, we talk about Lehkonen as a guy. And let's face it, we watched him a number of times. And, if he wasn't falling over his feet, he was, shooting the puck wide, a number of things on the negative side, but he was having a great year. He's a really well-liked guy in the dressing room, fun guy, and he's a guy was a perfect mold, if you will, of the type of personality and what he brought each and every night for the Montreal Canadiens. And I think that type of guy, will be missed. But as we all know, in the business, things happen. But happy for him. I mean, let's face it, he's going to a pretty good hockey club, and he'll fit in there just fine. But a really nice young man, and they're going to miss that type of good character in the dressing room and outside the dressing room.
For me, it's a player who's been traded before, like a few weeks ago, was just Tyler Toffoli, because I felt that trade was a little bit of a surprise, especially that the Montreal Canadiens were looking to trade for Tyler Toffoli in the past, and it didn't work out. And then he was able to come here, and he really did enjoy his time, and he was able to bring something that the Canadiens were looking for many years. His style of play. But it, as Kent Hughes said, there was a deal that made sense, and he had to jump on it for the future of this team. But I think, eventually replacing a guy like Tyler Toffoli is going to take a little bit more time, especially if you look through the playoffs and the run that he was able to have and the impact he had on this team, is one of the players that I think will leave a pretty big hole.
Yeah, I think they're going to miss Ben Chiarot for the simple fact he led the team in ice time. He was averaging over 23 minutes a game. That's a lot of ice time for somebody else to pick up. And then you factor in Brett Kulak gone also. That's more ice time on the blue line they're going to be missing. And Chiarot was just a guy who stood up for a great teammate. Everybody talked about it. Stood up for his teammates. Pro, well-liked by everybody. Smart guy. Happy to see him get a chance to go to Florida and have a chance to go back to the Stanley Cup final with what is a really good team. It's interesting, I laughed at when he was asked about he's not an analytics darling, as Kent Hughes said, but Ben Chiarot. And Chiarot said, I don't really know much about analytics. I should probably know more. But Ben Chiarot's the type of player that's going to help a team in a playoff run. We saw it last year with the Canadiens. He's not fun to play against. As a winger, you don't want to go in the corner with him. Big, strong guy who can skate, who can move. He's tough. And he's a good addition to that Florida team. That Florida team's good, a powerhouse. They're going to be fun to watch going into the playoffs.
Absolutely. I'll just add this here, because I do not want to rehash another analytics conversation. That whole Ben Chiarot discourse, we need to find a way to have the eye test people and the analytics people come together, because you can say that Ben Chiarot is not an analytics guy, but he does some good things on the ice. Like, you got to be able to see that with Ben Chiarot, but also yeah, maybe his underlying metrics could be better. And maybe we could find a way to explain them a little bit better too. He straight up said he doesn't really understand them. There are people who can do that, right? But I'll just add that with Ben Sherratt here. Like, we need to find a way to come together on this, because Ben Sherratt, I think, while I don't necessarily, I can understand why people are like, oh man, I don't know about throwing a first round pick for him. I think a team like a Florida, if they want to go deep in the playoffs, or any other contending team in the playoffs, I can understand why you would need a defenseman like Ben Sherratt.
Well, Rick can probably relate to this. I don't think there's an analytic stat that measures the fear of a winger going into a corner against a guy like Ben Sherratt, especially like game 5 of a series when you've already been pounded by him for 4 games. I don't think there's a stat that factors that in. So as I said, Ben Sherratt's just to me, his game is built for the playoffs, and the Florida Panthers obviously agree. That's why they were willing to give up so much to get him.
And analytics definitely wasn't a part of my era. And even with the great minus 43, I still managed to play 40 minutes a game.
No wonder your plus minus was so low. You played so many minutes. Jeez, give you a break.
Rick, when you were coaching, was there any analytics at that point being used at all? Nothing.
No. And that was never even discussed. Basically, we just basically watched the guys and saw who was playing well. And as far as numbers go, you went with some percentages of the face-offs over the course of the game, but to tally them up over a period of time wasn't happening. So, yeah,
things evolve.
It's a new game. So, whatever they want to do, let's just bring on a good team to get this Montreal Canadiens up and running and fun to watch again.
I had to save us all from a lengthy analytics discussion, because we can do 2 hours on that. Instead, I would like for you all to talk about the game that took place on trade deadline Monday. It's not often you get to see games on trade deadline day. I think there were 4 games that day, including the Canadiens against the rival Boston Bruins. The Bruins getting the better of the Canadiens in a 3-2 overtime win for the Bruins. Brad Marchand, that guy, that villain. He embraces himself as the NHL's villain. He gets the OT winner and the last laugh. Jess, what were your takeaways from that game?
Yeah, it's not an easy date for a player, and especially when you have a game you got to focus on. Like Artturi Lehkonen said, he was in the middle of his pregame nap when he got the call saying that he was traded to the Colorado Avalanche. So I think a lot of players maybe didn't sleep as well or didn't prepare as well as they would have if it wasn't trade deadline day. But the thing that is fun about the Canadiens in the last 5 weeks since Martin St. Louis took over as head coach is that they're fun to watch. This game against the Boston Bruins, they were constantly in it. They did have the lead. They weren't able to hold on to it, but it was an overtime loss. They were able to get a point. Rick's friend, Artturi Lehkonen, woke up, scored a shorthanded goal, and David Savard makes his way back to the lineup and finds this incredible scoring opportunity that he was able to do. So, all in all, it was a good game. It was, again, a pleasant surprise when you watch the Montreal Canadiens right now, that they are competing, that they're not going to win every game, but at least make it entertaining.
Yeah. I caught you there. I think you meant Yoel Armia, not Artturi Lehkonen.
Oh, sorry, yes, Yoel Armia.
Yoel Armia. I mean, I'm sure Rick Green liked Artturi Lehkonen too, but he definitely loves Yoel Armia. But you're right, he did get that goal.
Please don't get those two confused.
It was a great goal, and it just highlights how frustrating Yoel Armia is as a player. He's got all the skill in the world, and he showed it on that shorthanded goal. But when will we see anything like that again? Who knows? But I think the takeaway from that game is, as Kent Hughes said at trade deadline, they're not going to roll over and die. And they don't roll over and die, this team, like they did when Dominic Ducharme was coaching. You go back to that last game they played against New Jersey when they lost 7-1. You go back to Montembeault getting run behind the net by the game against the Oilers, and nobody did anything. So this team battles and competes and fights. And it was sort of a perfect result for the Canadiens in that they battled. They didn't win, so it helps them moving forward in the draft. They did get the loser point though, but this team's going to battle and they're not going to give up. And it's great because that losing attitude that had seeped into the locker room is disappearing. And even when they're losing, they're coming out of the losses with a positive vibe now. There's nothing negative about that game. At the end of the game, the Bruins just showed why they're a better team right now than the Canadiens. They, good teams find a way to win, and bad teams find a way to lose. And that was sort of the case but the Canadiens are such a much better team with Marty St. Louis, and also Jake Allen coming back. I mean, they're getting big saves now. You're seeing, as much as Dominic Ducharme is looking bad now with the way the team's going with Marty St. Louis and his defense. I mean, the goaltending situation and the injuries and everything else he was dealing with. Now with Jake Allen back, a healthy Jake Allen, what a difference that makes. And I'm sure that improves the spirit. I mean, Rick will notice the defenseman obviously feeling better when your goalie's going to make a save back there once in a while to bail you out. But there hasn't been a negative game since Marty St. Louis took over. Even when they lose, I mean, I think it's 4 of the last 5 games, I think have gone to overtime. It's exciting every time you watch them, and they're fun to watch. And before the coaching change, I was counting down the days. Oh my, 35 more games of this. I can't believe
we all were.
Watch 35 more games. Thank God I'm getting paid to watch these guys, because it was brutal. But now this is a team that competes and fights, and even when they lose, they're fun to watch. And with Jake Allen back, it's going to make a big difference, I think, moving forward too.
Like Stu said, in my books, Jake Allen stepping in, and doing the job that he did is great. Really happy for him. I mean, everybody was, worried that he was not going to be able to do the job anymore, or he was speculation of possibly trading him. He's a real competitor. He's got a lot of pride in doing a good job. And, he's responded really well to the point where they give the Canadiens a really good chance with key saves and unbelievable movement. And every time he's seemed to slide across the crease, I'm going, hopefully he's not going to pull anything more, because he's on his game. So that's obviously a huge bonus and a big boost for the team. And the guys in front of him, like everybody's kind of alluded to, that they're working, they're competing, they're showing a lot of pride in doing a good job. And this is something that they've asked from them right to the end of the season. They don't care about where they're going to finish. It's all about what they're doing each and every game, each and every shift, and they're having fun doing it. And it's a good environment, and really nice to watch. And we'll see if this will continue, and hopefully will, with these new guys or possible prospects coming in. They're molding their group to be a good team, and something that they're going to have some success down the road.
Okay. One other player who's looked pretty decently that I want to mention. I know we've looked at guys like Jake Allen and other guys in the roster. Corey Schueneman. He's actually looked decent. I mean, we're not talking about this all-world talent, but he's been solid, and that's okay for the Montreal Canadiens right now. Just fitting in on that third pairing, gets his first NHL goal over the weekend as well. Normally, whenever we big up defensemen, we try to start with Rick on these things. So I'm a bit surprised that I have to go to Stu first. Rick, don't worry. It means you get to think about your answer for Corey Schueneman for like a moment more.
He's been really impressive. I mean, he's a third pairing defenseman, but 26 years old, never drafted, played 4 years at Western Michigan University, where he was the captain. He was also a top scholar athlete. I was a really smart guy. He's confident on the ice. He looks really confident. Offensive, moving the puck, defensively. It was funny because after he scored his first NHL goal, it was announced at the Bell Center as his second NHL goal.
His second, yeah.
When he was asked about it after the game, he says, well, if they want to give me one more, I'll take it.
He'll take it.
And somebody else asked him if he had heard the fans screaming shoot before he shot and to score his first goal. He said, yeah, it was the guy in section 144 row E that I heard. And we're just showing a sense of humor and confident answering questions the same way he's been on the ice. So it's sort of a feel-good story. Is a guy 26 years old, finally gets a chance to play in the NHL for the first time. Again, I said never drafted. Obviously, a smart guy from being a top scholar athlete, of leadership qualities from having been a captain, played his 4 full years at the University of Michigan. And it's just a case of a guy who never gave up. And it's really nice to see him get a chance at that age to play in the NHL. And moving forward, everything's about the salary cap now, right? In the NHL, and a lot of Kent Hughes' moves were about the salary cap. And if there's a guy who might be able to fit in on your third pairing for an NHL minimum type salary. So it'd be interesting to see. There could be a spot for him next season.
And, judging from his play, he's taken full advantage of the opportunity. Look at, he doesn't look out of place. He skates really well. He's a heads up poised guy that doesn't, force plays that aren't there, and doesn't seem to panic when he's under pressure, in the defensive zone. And those are all attributes of a good defenseman that can play at the NHL level. And, like you said, he wasn't drafted. He was just really happy to get a chance to play in the NHL, and he's doing the job. And I really like the way he's not afraid to jump in there and be selective on the offensive side, knowing very well that he has the skating ability to get back. And that's the kind of mobile, smart defenseman you'd like to have on your team. That's going to bring that nice added offense and be smart at the same time. That doesn't hurt you defensively. So nothing but good things to say about him in a short time. And, if he continues to progress, it's going to be really interesting to see, who's going to fit into those top 6-7 defensemen next year.
And he's just making the most of this opportunity right now. The rest of the season for the Montreal Canadiens, it's gravy because we know that they're not going to make the playoffs. There's not that added pressure. And for an older guy at 26 years old, getting this opportunity to play in the NHL, he's just enjoying himself. And he's showing that, hey, if you need a guy, I can be here. I'm able to help out offensively, that I'm not just a player that can be in the AHL. I'm someone that you can count on. And I think it's good for him. A lot of times that I think there is that concern with maybe a younger player, that they are worried about their confidence if they don't have a very good game. But at 26 years old, he's happy to be there and making the most of this opportunity. So, it's been really good stuff from him so far.
As Rick said, too, he's not afraid to pinch in and offensively. But a lot of that, I think the credit for that goes to Martin St. Louis, who is allowing guys to do that and not be afraid to try things and not worry that they're going to be nailed to the end of the bench or sent to the press box if they see a read and they try and make an offensive play and it doesn't work. I mean, Victor Mete spoke about that after he got traded to Ottawa, that it'd be nice to go and play somewhere where every time you make a mistake, you're not going to be benched or, sit in the press box. And we're seeing that with a lot of these players. And now with so many young defensemen coming up in the system from the Canadiens, it's, player development's been a huge problem for this team for a long time. And it looks like that's changing now with Marty St. Louis. He's going to allow these young guys or older guys who haven't played in the NHL to play their game. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. Don't be afraid to pinch in offensively if you see that opportunity there. If it doesn't work out, as Marty St. Louis said on one of his news conferences, I'd rather players make a bad read than be afraid to make a read. And it's just been night and day, the difference from when Dominic Ducharme was coaching, and it was all about the system and being worried about where you were and worried about making a mistake. And if you make a mistake, you're not going to play. Those days seem to be gone. And Schueneman is a guy taking advantage of that. And I think as more of these younger defensemen come up, Gouli and the guys like that, I think it's going to help their development to be allowed to play without the fear of making mistakes.
And I think Martin St. Louis has got the forwards thinking, hey, listen, if our defenseman, you want to have him active and take some chances offensively. Surprisingly enough, even though you're not supposed to trust the forward defensively, he's saying, listen, it's your responsibility that if we get our D to activate himself on the offensive play, you as a forward better be responsible to cover for him so we don't get into a lot of on-man rushes. It seems to be working and, helping a lot of guys on the blue line is in as far as their overall play goes and confidence in saying, okay, let's chip in on the offensive side, providing we're selective and we don't cause any type of problems on the defensive side. So all good stuff happening from that whole group back there.
And it also goes to what, Kent Hughes said when he was hired as GM, that he wants this to be an offensive team, a team that's not complaining, oh, goals are hard to find in the NHL. If you look around, how many times have we heard that before? But since he's taken over, Martin St. Louis has been on the same page as Kent Hughes on the kind of hockey that they want to bring.
And Jeff Petrie said it a little while ago, too. Jeff Petrie is obviously not a fan of Dominic Ducharme's system. And he said, now, as soon as we get the puck on our stick, it doesn't matter where it is, we're thinking offense. And that's what Marty St. Louis wants. So with defensive zone, we get the puck, think offense. It's not like just chip it out, get it out. Let's create some offense and move forward. And we're seeing the results.
What a change a coaching change could make in the makeup of a team and the way we even speak about the Montreal Canadiens on this podcast. If Dominic Ducharme was still here, I could imagine the moods on all of our faces and all of our minds going through these episodes of Hockey Inside Out. But hey, we've gone past the trade deadline. We're about a little over a month away from the end of the season. Still got some storylines to chew through, and then we'll eventually get to the draft and free agency and all that. But in the meantime, we'll just have to take in the Martin St. Louis experience for what it is. Friends, thank you very much, as always, for joining me on Hockey Inside Out every week. Subscribe to the show on YouTube if you haven't already done so. I mean, I would assume if you're already here, you might as well click the subscribe button. We would really appreciate that. Subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out newsletter, which you can get from montrealgazette.com/newsletters. And of course, visit hockeyinsideout.com for full episodes and other full articles on the Montreal Canadiens. We will be back next week with a brand new episode.